Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You ready for another one?
Always.
This time, we're diving into the world of SpaceX.
All right, SpaceX.
Reusable rockets, astronauts to the ISS, that massive Starlink network. Kind of big deal. But we're going beyond the headlines with this one.
Oh, yeah. What do we got?
Articles, sure, but also some pretty interesting Reddit threads, even a piece about their move from California to Texas.
Wow, a real mix. That's what I love about these deep dives. You get to see things from all these different angles, official news, hardcore tech analysis, and, the raw passion of people who just love space.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, mission for today. Figure out what makes SpaceX tick. What's the secret sauce? What are the challenges? And what does it all mean for the future of space exploration, especially for you listening right now?
Let's do it.
Okay, first off, got to acknowledge that SpaceX has done some pretty amazing things. Reusable rockets like the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, those have seriously slashed launch costs.
Yeah, no kidding.
Their Crew Dragon is basically a taxi service to the ISS now. And then there's Starlink, aiming for global internet coverage.
It's mind-blowing how they've changed everything. Before SpaceX, space was pretty much just for governments with tons of money. Reusability was a sci-fi dream, and launching anything cost a fortune.
Right. Now it's almost routine.
SpaceX really forced everyone to rethink the game. And, it's crazy to think about their early days. We found some info about their early struggles. It was pretty intense. Multiple failed launches with their first rocket, the Falcon 1.
Oh, yeah, the Falcon 1.
And Elon Musk, he was putting in his own money just to keep the company afloat.
Talk about a gamble.
Seriously.
Thank goodness that Falcon 1 finally launched successfully in 2008.
Yeah.
And then, boom, a huge contract from NASA for resupply missions. What a relief that must have been.
That NASA contract was a game changer. It gave them the breathing room to focus on the Falcon 9. And that became their workhorse. With that success, everything just took off.
So what was the magic formula? How did they go from almost bankrupt to, leading the space race?
There are a few key things. One that stands out is vertical integration. They build almost everything in-house. Engines, software, the whole deal. It's very different from those giant companies like Boeing who rely a lot on subcontractors.
That's a great point. Imagine trying to bake a cake, but each ingredient comes from a different store across town. That's how a lot of traditional aerospace companies work. But SpaceX, it's like they have the whole bakery under one roof, so they can change the recipe quickly, avoid crazy markups from getting each ingredient separately.
Right. That in-house control gives them incredible speed and flexibility. If there's a problem, the engineer can just walk over and talk directly to the team building the part. It creates this culture of problem solving and rapid iteration.
And this amazing dedication, almost cult-like, we were reading on Reddit. People are working crazy hours because they believe in this mission. There's a story about how even the baristas felt like a crucial part of the team, keeping those engineers caffeinated.
There's a real sense of camaraderie, a shared purpose at SpaceX. It attracts people who want to push boundaries. It's not just a job, it's a mission. And speaking of pushing boundaries, that brings us to their design process. The fail fast, learn faster approach.
Yes, the famous SpaceX embrace of explosions. They're not afraid to launch prototypes, gather data, and adapt, even if it means watching a few rockets go boom.
Remember those early attempts to recover the Falcon 9 boosters? The first plan was using parachutes, and, well, as you can imagine, that didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I remember seeing those videos.
But instead of giving up, they studied each failure, gathered data, and finally perfected those booster landings we see today. That's the iterative process in action.
Pretty incredible. Okay, so we've got vertical integration, this iterative design. But what about, Elon Musk? You can't talk about SpaceX without talking about him. His leadership, his ambition, it's woven into the company.
Right. Musk's drive to do the seemingly impossible, it's contagious. It's everywhere at SpaceX. He sets these huge goals and then empowers his team to go beyond what anyone thought was possible. His influence is undeniable.
And that drive, that's what fuels their ultimate goal, right? Making humanity a multi-planetary species focused on Mars. A pretty ambitious goal that has definitely caught the attention of, everyone. But even with someone like Musk at the helm, things haven't always been smooth sailing for SpaceX.
True. There's been plenty of criticism and controversy, which we should talk about. But before that, let's address something we know is on your mind. What does all this SpaceX stuff mean for you?
Great question, and we'll delve into that later in this deep dive. But first, we got to talk about Starlink. This massive satellite network is aiming to provide global internet, but it's caused quite a stir, especially among astronomers.
Yeah, the concern is light pollution. You've got thousands of these Starlink satellites reflecting sunlight, and that can mess with astronomical observations. It's kind of like if someone were shining a flashlight in your eyes while you were trying to look at the stars.
Yikes. Not ideal. But SpaceX knows about this, right? Didn't they start adding visors to the satellites to cut down on that reflectivity? Are they doing anything else?
They've been tweaking the satellites' orbits and working on software to help astronomers, avoid them. But the debate is still going strong. Some astronomers say even with all that, Starlink could still really mess up sensitive observations, especially for those deep space objects.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Expanding internet access versus protecting scientific discovery. Where do you fall on that?
It's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, it feels like one of those classic unintended consequences things. And that actually brings up another concern, space debris. I mean, the more we launch up there, the higher the risk of collisions, right? And then we just end up with this hazardous debris field around Earth.
Think of it like rush hour traffic, but in space. One wrong move and bam, you could set off this chain reaction of collisions, putting future missions at risk. We could even end up with a barrier, blocking us from even getting to space.
Okay, now that is scary. It's like we're building our own space junk obstacle course. But SpaceX says their Starlink satellites have systems to avoid collisions and can deorbit when they're done. Is that enough to, ease those worries?
It's a good start, but this isn't a simple problem. As more companies and countries launch stuff, we need some serious international cooperation, stricter rules to manage all that traffic up there. It's kind of like the Wild West in space right now. We need some, cosmic traffic laws or something.
Cosmic traffic laws, I love it. Okay, so we've got the light pollution issue, the space debris dilemma, and then there's the whole national security side of things.
Yeah.
Remember that article about SpaceX building a spy satellite network for a U.S. intelligence agency?
Right.
That gets complicated fast.
Yeah, it blurs the lines between private space companies and, government stuff, raises questions about who's really in control. Could this tech be used for military purposes? What happens to international cooperation in space?
It's like SpaceX has become this powerful tool in the global chess game. Makes you wonder how this is going to impact space exploration and our relationships with other countries out there. But let's shift gears a bit. Talk about some exciting stuff. What can we expect in the future?
Okay, back to the more optimistic side of things.
Right.
We've talked about Starship's potential, but it's not just about Mars. It could change how we travel here on Earth, too.
Oh, yeah, that whole point-to-point travel idea. Imagine hopping on a rocket for a quick trip to, Tokyo.
Right.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
SpaceX wants to make it real.
Yeah.
They're talking suborbital flights, New York to Tokyo in under an hour. That would revolutionize transportation.
What about space tourism? We've seen some of that already, but Starship could open it up to a lot more people.
Absolutely. Imagine orbital cruises, lunar vacations, honeymoons on Mars.
Honeymoons on Mars, that's a new one.
Okay, maybe Mars is a bit far off. But the point is, Starship could make space tourism way more affordable, way more accessible.
So are we talking about a future where people are commuting to space stations for work, maybe even living in orbital habitats? It sounds wild. But with SpaceX, who knows?
It's not as crazy as it sounds. We're already seeing more interest in space-based industries. Manufacturing in microgravity, mining asteroids, experiments you couldn't do on Earth. Starship could be the transportation system that makes it all happen.
It's a huge shift in how we think about things.
Yeah.
We're not just exploring space anymore. We're talking about living and working there.
Exactly. And there's the potential impact on Earth, too. A lot of space tech ends up being useful down here.
Right.
SpaceX's work on reusable rockets, those advanced materials, life support systems, that could lead to breakthroughs in transportation, energy, medicine, all sorts of fields.
So they're reaching for the stars, but their innovations could have this ripple effect, making life better here on Earth. Pushing the boundaries in space pushes boundaries down here, too.
Exactly. That's what makes SpaceX so fascinating. But we can't forget the ethical stuff, the environmental concerns that come with these big plans.
Right. We talked about Starlink, the space debris issue. But there's also the impact of space travel itself, Launching rockets uses a lot of resources, creates emissions. What's SpaceX doing about that?
They're looking into more sustainable fuels like methane. They think they could make that on Mars using stuff they find there. That would mean less hauling fuel from Earth. They're also working on minimizing their carbon footprint in how they manufacture and launch things.
So they're not just focused on getting to Mars, they're thinking about doing it sustainably. It's great that they're taking those steps, but it's still a really complicated issue.
Totally. As we go further into space, we need to be having these conversations about the challenges. And it's not just SpaceX, right? We need to think about the impact of all the countries and companies out there.
You're right. It's a much bigger picture. And that brings up another interesting point. The growing role of private companies in space exploration. It used to be mostly government agencies like NASA leading the way. Now you have companies like SpaceX taking charge. Do you think that's a good thing?
It's both good and, well, maybe not so good. On one hand, private companies bring a lot of innovation, efficiency. They're not stuck with the same bureaucracy as government agencies, and they have different motivations.
Right. It's like they've injected this entrepreneurial energy into the whole space race.
That's a good way to put it. But there's the flip side. Their involvement raises questions about commercializing space. Will it just become another place for profit-driven exploitation?
That's a valid concern. We need a serious conversation about the ethics of space exploration, making sure it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Absolutely. And that conversation needs to include everyone. Governments, companies, scientists, ethicists, the public. Space belongs to all of us. We need to shape its future together.
Couldn't agree more. Well, we've covered a lot. The big picture, the controversies, potential benefits, ethical dilemmas. But I'm ready to geek out a bit now. Tell me about the tech that makes SpaceX so unique.
All right. Let's dive in. One of the things that sets them apart is their rocket engine design. Their Merlin engine, which powers the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, it's a marvel of engineering, known for its reliability and efficiency.
And then there's the Raptor engine for Starship. That's a whole other beast. It's designed to run on methane, a fuel they could potentially produce on Mars itself, which is perfect for their long-term Mars colonization plans.
The Raptor is a full-flow stage combustion engine, a much more efficient and complex design than traditional rocket engines. It's another example of SpaceX pushing the boundaries of what's possible, constantly iterating and refining their designs.
It's like they're applying software development principles to rocket science. Always testing, iterating, improving, just like software developers update their code.
That's a great analogy, and it's a huge reason for their success. That rapid iteration, combined with their vertical integration approach, means they innovate at a pace that's unheard of in aerospace. They're not afraid to experiment and learn from mistakes.
Oh, and let's not forget about their autonomous landing system. Seeing those Falcon 9 boosters land back on that drone ship with such accuracy, it's mind-blowing every time. It's like a sci-fi movie come to life.
It's an incredible feat of engineering. The booster has to navigate through the atmosphere, reignite its engines, and land upright on a platform that's moving at sea. It's this complex dance of software, sensors, control systems, all working together seamlessly.
It's a testament to their mastery of both hardware and software. They're pushing the boundaries on multiple fronts, constantly innovating, finding new solutions to really tough challenges. What else should we add to our SpaceX tech highlight reel?
Their use of 3D printing is definitely worth mentioning. They're printing entire rocket engine parts, which lets them create these complex designs that would be impossible to manufacture using traditional methods. This speeds up production, cuts costs, makes their rockets more competitive.
3D printing really is changing so many industries. It's fascinating to see how SpaceX is using it to revolutionize rocket manufacturing. What about heat shield technology? I remember reading about the challenges of protecting Starship during re-entry. Those heat shield tiles have to withstand insane temperatures.
Absolutely. Re-entering the Earth's atmosphere at those speeds creates incredible heat. SpaceX has had to come up with innovative heat shield materials and designs to protect Starship. It's another area where they're pushing the limits of material science.
It sounds like they're constantly pushing the envelope, innovating in so many areas, and that's what makes them so exciting to follow. They're not just building rockets, they're building the future of space exploration.
And that future is full of possibilities. They're talking about a world where space travel is normal, humans are on Mars permanently, and technologies developed for space improve life here on Earth.
It's an inspiring vision. There are definitely challenges and ethical things to consider, but it's thrilling to imagine what the future holds for SpaceX, for humanity's exploration of space.
So where were we? Oh yeah, the tech.
The tech, always my favorite part. What makes a SpaceX so special on that front?
Well, for starters, their engines. They've really mastered rocket engine design.
Engines, okay. Like what specifically?
Take the Merlin engine, for instance. It's what powers the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Super reliable, super efficient. It's a real workhorse.
I've heard of the Merlin, yeah. But what about the engine for Starship? The
Raptor.
Raptor, right. That's supposed to be a whole different ballgame.
Oh, absolutely. The Raptor's designed to run on methane. And get this. They think they can actually produce methane on Mars using resources they find there.
Whoa, wait, really? Produce it right there on Mars?
That's the plan. It would mean they don't have to haul all that fuel from Earth for the return trip. Game changer for long-term Mars missions.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like they're not just planning to visit, but to actually live there.
Exactly. And the Raptor is just one example. They're pushing the boundaries with all sorts of tech, like 3D printing, for instance. It's revolutionized their manufacturing process.
3D printing, yeah. I remember reading they're printing entire rocket engine parts. Is that right?
That's right. Really complex components that would be way too difficult and expensive to make the old-fashioned way. 3D printing lets them build rockets faster, cheaper, all while keeping things top-notch quality.
So they're ahead of the game in cost and speed because of 3D printing. Pretty smart. Okay, what about those landings? You know, those Falcon 9 boosters landing back on the drone ship. It's mind-blowing every time. How do they do that?
It's pretty amazing. Think software, sensors, control systems, all working together perfectly. The booster has to fly through the atmosphere, fire up its engines again, and land perfectly on a platform that's actually moving in the ocean. It's like threading a needle while riding a roller coaster.
It's hard to even wrap your head around it.
Right. It really shows their mastery of hardware and software, both.
Yeah.
And they're not stopping there. They're always looking for new solutions, new ways to solve these really complex problems.
Always innovating. Okay, so we've got efficient engines, 3D printing, those incredible landings. Anything else we should add to our SpaceX tech list?
Well, heat shield technology is pretty crucial. You know, protecting Starship during reentry is a huge challenge. Those heat shield tiles have to handle some seriously intense heat.
Yeah, it's like falling through a furnace when that spacecraft comes back into the atmosphere.
Exactly. And SpaceX is coming up with innovative materials, designs, all to make sure Starship can survive those extreme temperatures, again, pushing the boundaries of material science.
So they're ahead of the curve on engines, manufacturing, landings, heat shields. What's the common thread here?
They're not afraid to push boundaries, to constantly innovate, and that's what makes them so exciting to watch. It's not just about building rockets, it's about building the future of space exploration.
A future where space travel is more common, more affordable, open to more people.
Exactly, and they're not stopping at just getting to space. They want to build a permanent human presence on Mars. It's a big, audacious goal that captures the imagination.
It makes you think about all the possibilities, doesn't it? It's what we might be able to achieve out there.
For sure. But it's also important to remember that this journey comes with responsibilities. We've talked about the environmental impacts, space debris, national security concerns. These are things we need to think carefully about.
We have to be good stewards as we venture further into space.
Yeah.
Making sure what we do is sustainable benefits everyone.
Right. Space exploration is this amazing testament to human ingenuity, our desire to explore. And SpaceX, with their bold vision and dedication to innovation, they've sparked something, this excitement, this sense of what's possible. It's going to fuel humanity's quest to explore the cosmos for generations to come.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into SpaceX, we're left with a sense of wonder, of possibility. It's been an incredible journey exploring their work, their goals, their challenges, and who knows what the future holds. But one thing's for sure, SpaceX will be right there, pushing the boundaries, inspiring us all. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.